Before we get going today, a special thanks to Catapult, who provided us a coaches lounge to sit down with coaches and discuss some football at AFCA. And joining me on this episode is the Director of Sports Science and Analytics at Texas A&M, Kratik Malhotra. He has a diverse background in artificial intelligence, sports analytics, and sports science. He's been an integral part of Jimbo Fisher's staff since 2013, leading Florida State's sports science, testing, research, and implementation. He was part of their national championship there at Florida State. And he sat down with us at AFCA and discussed ways that coaches can use this technology when they're getting their start in it, from player load all the way to how this helps build a team and get players ready for game day. So there's some interesting stuff here which I think you'll enjoy. And if you haven't been into the data and analytics side of football, I think this will definitely pique your interest and you're going to want to look into more. So here's our episode with Kratik Malhotra. I'm excited to be sitting down here at AFCA talking to Kratik Malhotra, who is the Director of Sports Science and Analytics for Texas A&M. So thank you for taking the time and joining us here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I want to get a little bit about your background here and how you made it to the football world. Obviously a background in sports science, but tell us a little bit about your start in football and how you ended up at Texas A&M.
So I'm originally from India, and I studied engineering like most Indians do. But while I was studying engineering, I was working in Indian sports. I was working with Indian soccer. I was working for a soccer club and worked there for 2 years, came to the US to get my master's. After the last semesters of my master's program, I had an opportunity for an internship with the IMG Academy, I took that up, got a chance to work with the NFL and the NBA Combine program and Catapult monitors, heart rate monitors, and that's in America, in American sport, that's how I basically got my start. After that, there was an opening. I actually had a full-time offer after graduating for a sales job, a radio sales job, and I thought to myself, if I just want to do radio sales, I can go back and do it in India, or I can work as an engineer. But I came to America to work with sports analytics and use my engineering knowledge to do that. And so I instead grabbed the volunteer position at Florida State, giving up a full-time job. But it all worked out. I was blessed enough to be on staff for the national championship winning team, and after that, Coach Fisher called me into his office and offered me the full-time position. So,
with this, in looking back then, right?
Yes.
Analytics now is taking off. We're sitting here in the Catapult booth. We have all this stuff around us, all the things that these guys are doing with data. But that, when you were getting your start there, wasn't necessarily something that was big. What did you see as the opportunity, though, for yourself and both for the future, something like this to grow?
Well, so in the past, I'd already worked with sports tech for 4 years. So back in the day, soccer had a system called ProZone. There was match analysis. I had worked with GPS data. I hadn't worked with the physical GPS monitors, so I'd worked in the space. It was not that I had not worked in the space. So I knew what the scope was moving forward, but American football and even American sports, but at such, it was so new to American sports that I was like, maybe this is gonna work out, and maybe there is a real opportunity here, because soccer had been using it for the past 6-7 years. American sports had just started using it. All the conferences I've spoken at, I say one thing, that Coach Fisher is an absolute genius, and one of the reasons why I say that is because back in the day, 2010, 2011, he sent 2 of his assistants to Australia to find him an edge, and they came back with GPS monitoring. So somebody who has that kind of innovation, and like when you have coaches like him, who work in the sport, the potential is limitless.
So you have a situation like that. Obviously, you've grown into your role. You've done an outstanding job with the different things you've done, and a lot of coaches are interested in what can I do with my program, with the data, with the analytics, to help develop my athletes, and essentially to help me win. Right? I mean, coaches want to win. They're gonna buy into something if it's gonna help them win, not just because it looks cool. So it's a little bit overwhelming though on where you get your start with something like this that to a lot of guys is brand new. So looking at that, where would you start as a coach? What things would you start to use? I would guess that you can't jump in all the way and say we're going to use everything. That there has to be something you start to focus on. So for you, what would you advise coaches? Like here's how you get started with this.
I think what Catapult's done, I mean, it's crazy to see how far even Catapult has come as a company. But like 10 years ago, it was just them. Then they started buying companies, and I think what they have done is it's almost like a center brand, which has a lot of other companies and a lot of technologies that mixed into one. So it depends what you're using it for, right? If you're using it for injury prevention and return to play, you want to look at your high-speed running, you want to look at your player load, you want to look at imbalances, you want to look at all of that stuff. If you're looking for performance monitoring, and if you're looking for, you want to look at your accelerations and your speeds and all of that. And obviously that plays a huge role when it comes to injury prevention as well. But it really depends what you want to do. If you want to evaluate, on-field football performance of athletes, and I don't mean athletic performance, then you need to go towards, video coding, and you need to go towards breaking down film. And there are so many programs around the country that that do that to a level. But it really depends on what you want to do as a coach. But to start off with, if you're looking for injury prevention, if you're looking for getting a guy back from an injury, then I think you want to start with player load, and you want to start with high-speed running, and then moving forward, you can get into heart rate monitoring and recovery. Because I mean, we had an incident last week, and again last year too with Christian Eriksen in soccer. Like basically all around the world, you are having athletes pass out, pass away due to lack of recovery. And if you use your heart rate monitors well, and if you use hydration testing well, and a few other things, you can absolutely eliminate that. So
beyond the load management, and I know a lot of people initially thought of Catapult for those things, and that all of it is important, right? You want your guys to have everything on game day that they want to be able to optimize performance because they're ready. They haven't spent all their energy during the week, that they're right for that. So obviously that part is important, but going beyond that, the data, the analytics, all these different uses of the technology start to help you build a team, whether that's through recruiting or being able to place guys in either situations or positions that they're well suited for, right? You're able to start looking at that and get a very objective look at that because you know how to use the data. So talk to us a little bit about how you use this to build a team.
Well, I think that's a question for a coach. I'm not a coach, but all I can do is I can give my feedback on what the data tells me.
Right.
And the data comes from obviously a lot of sources. There's your GPS monitors and whatnot. There's video, there's film. You can break down film. But then but then there's also a new piece that's come in recently, and we built this out about 5 years ago at A&M with computer vision and getting tracking data straight from film and video. But in my position, all I can do is I can give my feedback to a coach, but how to build a team, that's not my place.
Sure. Well, I'm thinking more in terms of the pure athletic performance, right?
Yes.
That they have a guy who they want to see certain things in the way he's able to cut or break, or find these guys that this is exactly from the athletic performance side, the guy we're looking for, right? How can you use the data to say, Coach, here's the group of guys that are going to fit for you?
So again, and this is just me talking, and somebody who's worked abroad and whatnot. When you look at football, it's almost like it's 9 or 10 sports that are playing in one. What a wide receiver does, a cornerback does something very different. What a quarterback does, O-lineman does. O-lineman does not do that. Obviously, there are things that overlap, but it's 9 and 10 sports into one, so like different positions have to be, in terms of data, have to be evaluated differently. Like when you're looking at a running back, right, you want to look at what's his top speed in the first 10 yards, because the biggest misconception is, okay, what's his top speed like? Does he run 21, 22 miles an hour? But, I mean, if you're talking about a running back position, we had a running back in the day at Florida State. He would get to 18 miles an hour in about 10 yards, which is phenomenal. I'd never seen that before. Never seen that before in any sport. And but again, his top speed was about 20.4, 20.5 miles an hour. If you see him at the combine, didn't really have good times, didn't really run track. But if you talk about him, you place him in the running back position, so different, and elite, baller in the NFL as well. So I mean, it depends in position to position. I think you got to look at, you got to evaluate every position differently, and yeah, it depends in position to position.
So in looking at, going beyond finding those people, though, thinking about how coaches can use this to develop the scheme that they're going to use, understanding these are the pieces I have right now, certainly being able to recruit to find some of those things as well, but knowing these are the things that I can ask of my players for them to be successful at. Have you seen coaches starting to embrace the technology to do those types of things, to help them make better decisions about this is what we should be doing right now, or maybe this is what we're missing, we need to develop this, etc.?
Yes, so I mean there are two parts to this. One is the strength coaches part, right? Like, what do you, when you're training a guy in the summer, what do you want your wide receivers to hit? What do you want your running backs to hit? Depending on the metrics that we are looking at. Then it's the position coaches aspect. More football specific movements. Where do you want the guy to be, and what does he need to work on? But yes, I mean, and again, I've been extremely blessed to have worked with Coach Fisher and Coach Coley and Coach Craig. Like a lot of these coaches, Coach Elko also and Coach Durkin now, like who are so big into the data, and who want to use data to their advantage. Because one thing I think working in football I've always been tied to is been with coaches who will do what's the best for their players, whether it's cutting them back, whether it's pushing them when they have to push them in order to get the most out of them, and it's been awesome, yeah.
Well, in that regard too, I've talked with different guys, and there's actually a rugby coach by the name of Richie Gray who brought up an issue in coaching being that you know, we have everybody siloed. You know, our sports scientists are over here, our strength coaches are here, our you know, coordinators, our position coaches, and for a lot of them, it's not interconnecting, right? They're not necessarily working together. This guy might get all the data from you, take a look at the report, but there's not that integration where we understand how all these things start to work together for us within our program, right? How all of this matters. What's your recommendation for coaches who are getting into this to make sure that you don't end up in that situation where somebody like you is just sitting in that corner office and the position coach looks at it and tosses it aside? You know, how important is that integration?
I think it's very important. I think it's very important to be on the same page. And this is not only in football, but in every organization. It needs to come from top down. And, you know, if your top guy is buying into it and he wants to make the necessary changes to help athletes and to make sure that, you know, he causes them no harm and he only helps them, I think that's very, very important. Because, I mean, you know, this is not in the US, but this is outside. You know, this is back in India, and I did a little bit of work in Ireland as well. You know, I have come across coaches like who have been old school, who let the sports scientists just be, who let them just deal with the trainers, the strength coaches, and it doesn't help because everybody is on a different page. You know, you can give the coach the best of information, but if he's not gonna listen to you, you can be the greatest sports scientist in the world. What's the point? And you know, working with the coaches I've worked with, I think they've been very receptive to it, and it's been awesome.
So when you're working with the coaches on the field, the guys really trying to understand how to use this better, what are some of the best questions they're asking you that are going to help them do something with all that you provide as the you know, with the data, with the analytics as a sports scientist?
I think communication is so important, and it's not only about them, but it's also about us. How do I communicate? Right. A lot of times, like, people put pressure on the coaches to understand this data, but it's not a coach's job to understand. It's my job to make a coach understand where I'm coming from, you know. And 90% of the times, or maybe less, like, or more, you know, they may agree with you, and there are times that they may not, but you got to even respect that, and just got to understand that, I mean, they've devoted their entire life to the sport. You know, I've devoted, you know, since the time I started, to data and understanding data in sports and American football. And you got to respect them, and I think if you respect them, they'll start to respect you. And when it comes to understanding the question that you asked, like, you know, what are they looking for? I think they want to help athletes, and they want to learn. Like, they want to know, how can they help athletes? How can they have, like, an athlete who's fully fit and absolutely 100% going into game day? And in order to do that, a lot of times, like, you know, almost on a weekly basis, the coaches, you know, a position coach would come up to him and be like, are these guys okay? Like, you know, what can I do in order to make sure we cut down on injuries? And that's a question they ask me, but that's the question that they also ask the athletic training staff. You know, so if a guy needs to be cut back, you know, they can do that. I mean, that's, you know.
Yeah, I've just heard stories from programs who are using this and trying to maximize their use of it, that they take the data seriously in what it tells them about how they might build or adjust their practices. I heard, you know, shared a story. One of the coaches on the podcast shared a story of how, you know, their strength and conditioning guy and their sports scientist, you know, during practice said, hey, your position group is done today, right? No more running. Like, you got to shut it down because they want to, they want them ready for game day, or special teams periods changing so there's shorter runs. Building practices, taking the data and building practices so that they're efficient over the course of the year. I could use that same practice plan from week 1. It might not be the best practice plan for my team as it goes. So how are they able to use that kind of data to help the practices as well?
See, you're spot on. So I'm out there with the team with a laptop on me, and we monitor each guy real time. So you get their loads, you get their distances, you get their high-speed running distances, you get their heart rates, you get all of that data flowing into the system. When a day before we start practice, you obviously have levels set for each guy. How much is a guy going to do? At what point does he enter the red zone? And when he gets closer to entering that, I'd go up to the position coach, probably midway through practice, 3/4 way, and I'm like, look, we got to cut this back. And I think, like earlier you had asked a question about, learning and what do the coaches want. I think one thing I've learned is, and I've learned this from coaches, is trying to again communicate. If you want to go up to a coach, you're better off telling him, you're better off telling him that, look, instead, if he's going 3 straight reps, just send him 2 straight reps, and what that does is, over the rest of practice, it would cut down his load, it would cut down the distance that he's running. So it just helps that way. Like, it's, again, communication is a huge thing, because again, if you're a coach, that way you want to help your athletes because you want to service them the best. You want to make sure that you get the most out of them. Yeah, I'm on the practice field with a laptop on me, and we have levels set for each guy. What's the max that we want this particular athlete to be, and where is he at now? If he gets close to, if he's within that 15% range, if he's already gotten to 85% of where we want him to be, I go up to the coach. I'm like, look, you got 3 periods left. Try cutting this guy back. And but yeah, load management is massive, and for years we have done that. I mean,
yeah.
So.
Well, it's I can remember back to around 2010. I'm coaching at a Division III school, and my receivers coach was really good about understanding at what point, how many plays in a game is this guy going to be effective, the most effective for us. Like, as an example, our starter maybe 48 reps might be his top, right? And that helped him understand how he's subbing guys in, when he's subbing guys in, and building for him, building his plan for that game to make sure that we might run 70 plays in a game. This guy only has 48. I don't want to have to shut him down after the 3rd quarter. That we've got him in the 4th quarter, so he's able to spot other guys in there. And I would think that you guys do that quite a bit in understanding where is this guy optimal for us on game day, and how can we build our substitution plan or our plan to play these guys that hey, we're still winning in the 4th quarter too.
Absolutely. And if you go back and if you hear Coach Fisher talk and you read, all the quotes that he has given, one name that he has mentioned in the past is Dalvin Cook. And Dalvin Cook hurt his hamstring in the middle of the season, but the way we brought him back 2015, he went out and got all the reps that he wanted in games, and that was a huge success. It was us working with the sports medicine staff, but us and the sports medicine staff also working with the coaches, with the running backs coach, with Coach Fisher, and that turned out to be a huge success.
So as a coach getting into this and using the data, using the analytics, what are the things really that I should be thinking about now to help starting to build this into what I do as a coach?
I think the first thing is just accepting that you have a lot of data sources, and also being open and just trusting the technology. I think the main thing is to trust the technology. If you're a coach, there's a technology, especially with GPS systems and heart rate monitors and biomechanics systems and even LPS systems. Like, this works. People have had success. So just accepting that there's something out there that is going to bring me success if I use it right, and giving the technology the opportunity. Now, where a lot of coaches, the issues that a lot of coaches, especially from small schools, run into is the technology can be expensive.
Yes.
And I think Catapult has done a really good job with, making these systems for clear tech for high schools, and that are fairly less expensive. But whatever system you use, you gotta be accepting. Be like, all right, how can I use this? There's something that helps, and I know this helps. How can I use this to help my players? Number one. Number two, even if at this point I cannot afford this technology, what else can I do? So it could start from, taking RPs and questionnaires, rate of perceived exertion, asking players how hard practice was.
Right.
I think, at first we were just doing a basic RPE scale, and I was sitting with Coach Fisher, and Coach Fisher was like, I think, we should also ask athletes how hard is a practice physically, but how hard was a practice mentally, So that's two numbers right there, but then it helps him evaluate where the athlete is. What does he think the practice was? As you go on, you still have your RP scores, but then you have your GPS data with it. Catapult's come up with quarterback metrics, and they've come up with alignment metrics, which give you further data points. You can compare those metrics right there. But to start off with, you can start anywhere. But I think just accepting that there's something out there, that can help me in my program, I think is a huge step.
Yes.
And yeah, once you start, most people don't want to look back.
Yeah.
And because it's so fascinating, the science of it is so fascinating. Hopefully those coaches have huge success as well. And just the field in general. The field is going so far. There's so much stuff that's happening. Especially with the whole AI bit. There's so much stuff that's happening. But I think all of us have to be careful. You cannot trust the data blindly. A lot of sports scientists and a lot of people out there tend to get a lot of criticism, and that's because a lot of people they trust the data blindly. But I come back to respecting a coach and what he does, because he's devoted his life to this. And we've devoted our lives to data and understanding that data. And there needs to be a middle ground. When you respect them, they respect you.
Yeah.
And then moving on, because everything that's happening and where we are going, I think it's a very, very exciting time to be in sports tech. And again, the possibilities are infinite.
Well, I certainly appreciate you taking the time and sharing some insight here. I'm excited to see where this goes next. I know you and I talked before we recorded the show, and there's a lot of interesting things happening, and certainly would love to have you back sometime and get some of those updates and thoughts on how we use those in the future. But again, thank you for taking the time, and best of luck to you guys in 2023.
Thank you, and Keith, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I highly recommend you checking out one.catapultsports.com. This definitely is the future in how we develop our athletes and win games. Again, go to one.catapultsports.com. Follow all we're doing at coachandcoordinator.com, and follow me on Twitter at Coach K. Grabowski.